Hey guys, it's Christian. For this video, I wanted to do something new. Kind of wanted to start a new segment called the Complete Filmography Review, where I would take a filmmaker who's done about 10 or so films and then just kind of go through them one by one and kind of give my thoughts on it. And for this one, I kind of wanted to do James Cameron. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, as you can see by my collection here. Yeah, he's just someone I really admired, and all of his films have kind of like push the boundaries of visual effects, and obviously with Avatar: The Way of Water coming out, I kind of want to give my thoughts on that as well. But just to start off, I just wanted to say I'm probably not going to include his first film, Piranha 2, The Spawning. I know technically that was his first film, but since he came on like super late and then, he was fired after like 3 weeks, technically it's not really his film, so I decided to skip that one. And also for this video, I just wanted to kind of go through James Cameron's narrative films, not necessarily his documentaries like Ghost of the Abyss or Aliens of the Deep, just to kind of keep the list a little bit more contained. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump in. So first off, we start off with The Terminator. Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite films of his. I think it's a very impressive film. Just the fact that this was like technically his first film, his first narrative film. The fact that, kind of pushed the boundaries of like stop motion animation when it came to like the Terminator, and then like kind of like the practical effects with like the Terminator like exoskeleton, and then all like the hybrid effects with Arnold Schwarzenegger's like half his face gets blown off and you kind of see the Terminator bits underneath the surface, like the makeup side, and then kind of like the animatronic side, the scene where, he's kind of like cutting into his arm and then like cutting into his eye, and you can see the cybernetics underneath, where they kind of switch back and forth, where you don't really know, like, is this like actually Arnold doing all this stuff, or is this the animatronic doing all this? So I thought that was really impressive. And one of my favorite things about the movie is just kind of like the action, suspense, and horror. Like James Cameron was very inspired by like the Halloween movies. Like he really wanted to do kind of like a 1970s style slasher movie, but with this one with a cyborg instead, because like he had that dream, back when he was making Piranha 2, of an exoskeleton crawling out of the fire, being pulled by knives and everything, and that kind of image very much haunted him, and he wanted to make a movie out of that. So I thought that was like a really, really cool kind of inspiration, kind of like literally came from his nightmares, and the fact that, since it is a Terminator, like obviously they don't make anything like that yet, as Sarah says in the movie, so he decided to make it from the future, coming to the past to terminate her, since she's the mother of John Connor, who's like supposed to be the savior of humanity after the machines rise up and take over the world and everything. So I thought that was like a very really cool aspect of it. The fact that it's kind of like, like the characters are on the run the whole time. Sarah and Kyle Reese are on the run from the Terminator. Kind of has like that monster movie feel, so you really feel like it really much is like a Halloween movie with the slasher after the final girl at the end. And the fact that Sarah Connor, starts off as this kind of like normal teenager. She's kind of like Jamie Lee Curtis's character in Halloween. And then, she kind of like, as the story goes on, she becomes more sure of herself. She becomes more of this leader that Kyle is telling her about, that John will eventually be, and that she eventually has to raise him up to become. And then we see that more in Terminator 2, which we'll get to a little bit later. Yeah, the fact that she kind of has this whole character arc where she kind of goes from being ordinary to extraordinary, I thought it was really, really cool. And the fact that Kyle Reese is this very good supporting character, and then obviously he becomes the father of John Connor, after they kind of conceive him in the later scene in the movie, which I thought was a really cool twist, which you really don't really see that coming. The fact that John Connor sends technically his father back in time to meet with Sarah, and then eventually conceive him so that he can be born and then become the leader of humanity and the resistance. I think it's really interesting, the fact that all the exposition is told from Kyle. The fact that you don't know anything about this whole backstory with the res machines and everything, and like Kyle's giving all this exposition like while they're on the run from the Terminator, filling in all the gaps on all the backstory for Sarah to understand like what she needs to prepare John Connor for in the future. So I thought that was an interesting aspect as well. And also the fact that this is like a very like low budget film. Just thinking like Avatar, how that's like the most expensive movie of all time, like all these visual effects, and then you kind of go back to James Cameron's first movie with the Terminator, and it's like very, very low budget, very much like guerrilla filmmaking. But I know he started off at like the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking. That's where he met Galen Hurd, and he did a lot of visual effects for all these kind of like low budget sci-fi movies, and obviously he was at the top of his game. And then when he kind of had the opportunity to actually make something on his own, you can tell he kind of he went like all in, and he really pushed himself to make something great. And the fact that it is as impressive as it is, and the fact that it's now in like the National Film Registry for like film preservation, for being like historically and culturally significant. Just a testament to how much effort James Cameron put into this kind of very low budget, B movie, slasher story that, I'm sure like the studio didn't really have a lot of faith in, but, James Cameron being the visionary that he is, put all this effort into it. So I think, yeah, it's very impressive in that aspect. And then, the fact that it, spawned a whole bunch of sequels and franchises and video games and comic books and TV shows. It's just, yeah, just again, just a testament to just how much of a visionary he is. And the fact that he's able to push himself beyond the boundaries of what's expected of him, and then he obviously kind of continues on into his other future films. But yeah, I just thought that was very, very impressive. And another thing is just like the storytelling and the world building, the fact that it's like a time travel story, and the fact that it's not the typical slasher story. You can tell like James Cameron put like a lot of thought into the backstory, into the time travel, into like the tech noir side of it. It's another thing that I kind of admire about him is that he puts so much detail into all of his movies. The fact that he created the whole backstory of the Terminator, how it's an endoskeleton, that has like human tissue over it, and the fact that they created like this device that sends it back in time to terminate the mother of its enemy. This whole backstory of Skynet and the war and the resistance. You didn't really even have to put that all into the exposition of the movie. You could have just had it be, Terminator drops into 1984, and then he's going on a killing spree trying to find Sarah Connor and terminate her. But the fact that he has those flashbacks to the future war with like Kyle Reese, kind of in that underground resistance, and taking out all those Terminators that come in, and the dogs that are able to spot Terminators and all that. I thought it was very, very interesting. The fact that he kind of grew up loving science fiction and like reading science fiction novels and, watching sci-fi movies, Star Wars by George Lucas and, 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick were one of his big inspirations, and the fact that he wanted to kind of have everything kind of be grounded in reality somewhat and have everything have an explanation to it. Just again, another testament to, how detail oriented he is. We'll get into that more with his future stuff. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was just like the iconic line, I'll be back. The fact that when James Cameron even wrote that line, like he didn't even think it was going to be, get a laugh or, be iconic or everything. He was just like, oh, it's just a thing that the Terminator would say when he comes in trying to get Sarah Connor, and then obviously gets stopped by the guy at the front desk. So he's like, says I'll be back, goes back and then drives the car through the police station and destroys everything. But yeah, just the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's not going to be an Oscar-winning actor, but the fact that his best acting is when he's playing a cyborg, and I think a lot of people kind of agree with that. He's not going to be a Shakespearean actor or anything, but when he's playing like a robot, and then we'll get more into that with Terminator 2, where he just feels like iconic, in a way. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up too. All right, now we'll move on to Aliens. This one's another really good movie. I think I like a little bit better than the first Alien. Like I love the first Alien movie, but I think Aliens just kind of tops it a little bit more. It's just a little bit more action packed. Just the characters a little just bit more fun. There's a little bit more drama, a little bit more stakes than the first Alien movie. Like the first Alien movie was like groundbreaking. When it came to like the used universe aspect to it, when it came to practical effects, when it came to horror, sci-fi horror, it was groundbreaking in that aspect. But with Aliens, it's just a little bit more fun. Like I feel like I can like watch that a little bit more than Alien. I know it's very controversial, like which one's better, Alien or Aliens? But I think for me personally, I think I just like Aliens just a little bit more than the first Alien. Yeah, and like I said before with Terminator, it really like jumps up in production value. This was James Cameron's first like big studio film. With the first Terminator was very like like a very, in a way, kind of very independent movie, but like this was like Fox Studios, and obviously they had a big hit with the first Alien movie. So with this movie, the expectations were super high. I know like there was like the whole backstory of like the fact that they didn't actually even want to do an Alien sequel in the first place. As time went on, they kind of warmed up to the idea of the studio, and then they hired James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd onto the project. But the fact that they that the studio didn't want Sigourney Weaver because they were just like, oh, she's too expensive, like we don't want her. James and Gale quit the project, and then eventually they were able to kind of negotiate with Sigourney Weaver to kind of get her onto the project, and then James and Gale were finally able to come back onto the project. So yeah, I'm sure it was like a very like tumultuous development period just to get Aliens onto the screen. But yeah, I'm glad that everything worked out. But I know that like production was very, very stressful. Like the British crew that James was working with, wasn't cooperative with him, and like they wouldn't really take his direction. They would call him governor, and then he would say like, I really much prefer if you don't call me governor. And they're like, okay, governor. So yeah, that was crazy. And the post-production was insane too, just with all the visual effects and like the practical effects and all that. And then I know he had spats a lot with James Horner, the composer. So the fact that this movie got made at all and it was as good as it was, it's just again, just a testament to how much of a visionary James is, to kind of see how successful this could be, and how he goes all in with this project. But yeah, just the fact that it's called Aliens, so obviously there's more than one alien. So instead of the crew kind of going against like one alien in the first movie, they're going against a bunch of aliens. What's really impressive is just like all the alien xenomorph costumes, and then obviously the alien queen at the very end that they battle, this kind of like very animatronic monster that's like puppeteered by a couple guys, is like very, very impressive. And then just the whole battle at the end between Ripley and the xenomorph queen, is very, very impressive. It's like a mother versus a mother, which is another really cool aspect about the movie, is that the really like the main theme of it is about motherhood, and how Ripley becomes a mother. Technically she was a mother in the first Alien movie, wasn't she was in cryosleep for 57 years. Her daughter passed away, and then she's obviously very emotional about that. So then when little Newt comes into the picture, and she becomes like this kind of surrogate mother to her, that kind of whole relationship strengthens. And then when you get to the climax, is really these two mothers in a way protecting their young, where Ripley's trying to protect Newt from the alien queen, who's trying to protect her alien egg babies. And then Ripley comes in with her flamethrower and is like blasting all of them. And then eventually in the final battle, where Ripley's in the power loader suit going against the alien queen, that whole epic showdown was really cool. So I'm glad that they gave Ellen Ripley a little bit more kind of character depth to her. And then obviously she's this huge action star in this one. She kind of created the iconic female action hero that James Cameron is so fond of, and that he'll continue on into Terminator 2 with Sarah Connor, which we'll get to later. But how like Ripley's like this icon now, for the female action star, because there really wasn't, at least to my knowledge, there wasn't really like a ton of like female action stars. There was really just like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, were kind of like the big action guys. So the fact that they gave it to James gave it to a woman to be the main character, the female action star, was a really cool choice. And the fact that Sigourney Weaver got an Oscar nomination for this movie was just kind of mind blowing. You don't see that every day. You don't really see at least back then, you don't really see like science fiction really getting the credit that it deserves. It's always about like the comedies and the dramas that kind of get the attention. But the fact that Aliens was honored in that way, especially with a Best Actress nomination, was very culturally significant. And I thought, yeah, that was like a really, really groundbreaking at the time. Yeah, another thing too is just like the action sequences. Like the tagline for this one is like, "This time it's war," where you have all the Marine characters, and they're kind of like having the shoot 'em ups with the aliens, and then like the ground transport that like Ellen's kind of driving throughout the colony is like really cool. Just like the claustrophobic scenes of like characters trapped in like vents, kind of like going through, and like aliens like popping up and like pulling them down into them. And I feel like it's just like a little bit more of like an entertaining alien movie. And yeah, it's too bad that this is really like the last good one, because I mean, just in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of other people's opinion, like Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection just weren't up to the standard that Alien and Aliens set at the beginning of this franchise. So yeah, it's a little too bad, but I'm glad that they, at least for this one, they kind of go off on a high note, where as I kind of echoed with the first Alien movie, where you think, like at the very end, where Ripley, Newt, Bishop, and Hicks kind of get off into that transport. They get off on the ship and they fly away. from the colony before it explodes, and you think, okay, everything's all good, and then suddenly the alien queen kind of comes out, and then that's when Ellen and the alien queen have that power loader lift battle, and that the iconic line like, "Get away from her, you." So yeah, I thought that was like really really cool, just kind of have that twist at the end, where you think it's over, but it's like it's not, kind of like with the first Alien. So I really appreciated that as well. Yeah, I think it's just as scary as the first one in a way. It's not, I don't think it's as suspenseful as the first Alien, but I think it's definitely like just as scary. The scene where like the aliens cut the power, and it's like, oh, they cut the power. How can they cut the power, man? They're animals. It's like it very much has like that kind of haunted house feel to it, which is really cool. So you get like the action and the horror as well. So I really appreciate that too. And then there's just like a bunch of like scares in the movie as well. Like the face huggers, like the chest bursters, where they see like that person in the colony like stuck to the wall. They like lift her head, and then suddenly the chest burster comes out. That's pretty scary. When Ripley's stuck in that kind of like contamination chamber, and then like the face hugger's like about to attack her, and she's trying to get away from that. And then obviously with the xenomorph queen, coming down from the shaft and slowly approaching Ellen and Newt is like very very cool too. And like the part where Bishop is like ripped in half. So there's still like a lot of like really good scares in the movie as well, even though it's a little bit more leaning towards the action side. But I think it's like just as scary as the first one, but just a little bit more action packed. And the last thing I want to say is just like the supporting characters. I think Hudson's my favorite, played by Bill Paxton. Game over, man, game over. That's just like iconic right there. But then his whole relationship with Vasquez, and then the other supporting characters as well. I mentioned like Hicks and Bishop and other Marine characters. But there's just some like really cool iconic fun characters. They have like their epic sacrifices or their epic deaths. Like Bill Paxton's like the only actor who's been killed by a Terminator, an alien, and a Predator. So this is like the movie where the second James Cameron movie where he gets killed off. So I thought that was like really really funny. But the supporting characters are great. It's a really good like ensemble movie. Obviously like Ellen Ripley, Sigourney Weaver is the lead, and she kind of holds everything together, but the supporting cast members are like just as good and very very entertaining as well, and obviously like very very iconic lines. All right, and now we move on to The Abyss. And with this one, I don't have a ton of opinions on it. Like I've only seen it a couple times, along with like True Lies is another movie, James Cameron movie that I've only seen a couple times, so I might not have a ton to say about that one, but we'll get to that one later. But from what I remember, I really enjoyed this one. I love the fact that it's a very like claustrophobic movie. It's a movie obviously takes place underwater. It's like one of James Cameron's passion projects. He's wanted to do since he was in high school. He wrote that short story about characters diving down to the depths of the ocean and encountering some kind of intelligent life under there, which I thought was really great. It's just like a really good, just like fun thriller. It takes place underwater. Obviously it was a very stressful movie to make. The fact that they spent so much time underwater, but the fact that James Cameron had the innovations of not only like filming underwater, but also underwater communications with like that helmet system, which is really 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 cool. It kind of like has pros and cons. I think as a just like an underwater thriller, it works really great. But when it comes to like the alien life stuff, kind of goes off the wagon a little bit, because it really could have just been the oil rigger characters trying to go to the depths of the ocean to recover the bomb that was attached to the submarine that sank to the bottom of the ocean. It could have been like this whole thriller of Michael Biehn's character Coffee, his whole kind of his craziness that he feels when he with being underwater for too long, and then wanting to go after the bomb, the ship kind of going into the depths of the ocean, and then Bud and Lindsay's character having to go down to the depths of the ocean, recover it, and then Bud having to sacrifice himself, so to speak, because it's really just a one-way trip. I thought that could have been like a really cool just like drama right there. But the fact that you had the aliens in there, I know James Cameron loves aliens, but I think in a way it was kind of like, in my opinion, it was kind of a detriment to this story. I know like the overall theme is supposed to be these kind of like non-terrestrial intelligence trying to show like humanity, like how corrupt they are in a way. In the special edition, it's supposed to be like this giant tidal wave that's about to crash into these different places around the world, and the NTIs are kind of in control of all that, and they're about to kind of wipe them out. But then once they see the relationship between Bud and Lindsay, how at first they were kind of antagonistic towards each other, but then as the story went on, they kind of rekindled their love for each other, and then the NTIs were kind of inspired by that, and they saw that humanity is capable of love and capable of compassion and caring for each other, so they decided to stop the tidal waves, and that kind of brings world peace in a way. So I understand why like critics were, very critical about that aspect, where you kind of have this, where on one hand, like I said before, you have this kind of like intense, claustrophobic underwater thriller, and then suddenly it becomes like E.T. in the end, where it kind of has like that sentimental thing where like aliens are trying to show humans, how they can be compassionate for each other, which I totally like understand and everything. I just think the two ideas didn't quite gel with each other in a way, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, I think watching the special edition, it kind of gives more explanation to kind of like the conflicts between the different countries in the world, and like what they're going to be doing about the recovery of this torpedo that went to the ocean, and then with these tidal waves about to hit these different parts of the world, how they're going to resolve all that. So yeah, I totally understand. But yeah, that's kind of just my kind of overall thoughts on The Abyss for that aspect. But one thing that I think everyone can agree on that was really, really amazing was just like the visual effects, especially the water tendril effect. That was really like the first CG animation in a movie, kind of like a soft surface CG animation in a movie. I think the first one was like the stained glass night that was in the Young Sherlock Holmes movie. But this one was kind of like the first kind of like free flowing, water reflective soft surface animation in film. And I thought that was like very, very groundbreaking. And then obviously they'll kind of continue that on with Terminator 2 with the T-1000's liquid metal form, which we'll get to later. But the fact, Dennis Muren, was responsible for that. And, all the innovations he made, with that. And then with Terminator 2, like I said before, and then, with Jurassic Park. And then after that, the world changed from there. But the fact that James Cameron was, at the forefront of kind of like this change when it came to CGI and everything. Because I think originally he was going to wanting to do like stop motion animation and then have like a reflective surface on the kind of the stop motion puppet that kind of went through the set. But, obviously it probably wasn't going to look great. So he decided to turn to CGI probably after seeing Young Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, he turned to Dennis Muren, the genius at ILM. And, the world was changed after that. So yeah, if anything, whether you like the movie or not, you can't deny that, this was a very far leap forward when it came to the frontier of visual effects. And, that's something I can really appreciate. No, I like the movie. Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's not my favorite James Cameron movie, but I appreciate it for what it is, and then I obviously appreciate what it did for visual effects, pushing that forward. And then another thing, just like what I said before, like when it came to like, the action and everything, when it came to like, the claustrophobia, the action scenes, that take place underwater, like the kind of submersible battle that they have, like they're running through the insides of the ship, the one-on-one fight between Bud and Coffee, I thought was really engaging. But yeah, it's like, James Cameron knows how to direct action, which we'll get to a little bit later with Terminator 2. But obviously with Terminator and Aliens, he has a really good eye for what makes a really engaging action sequence. And I think one of the things that really helps with that is like you care about the characters, you care about Sarah and Kyle getting away from the Terminator, you care about Ellen saving Newt from the Alien Queen, and you care about Bud and Lindsay kind of getting away from Coffee and kind of reuniting in a way. So yeah, that's another thing I appreciate about James Cameron's movies, is that not only are they like action-filled movies, but they have a lot of heart to them, and you really care about the characters. Yeah, and lastly, I just wanted just talk about the underwater scenes. Just like the fact that there's a lot of like suspenseful scenes where like characters like drowning, or like characters are like in like a claustrophobic area and like the water's rising up. We'll get to more of that with Titanic. But this is kind of like the start of that with all like the underwater suspense scenes. So I really appreciated that, and I got to hand it to all the actors and filmmakers who were part of this movie, who kind of all the things they had to go through. A lot of them had like physical and mental and emotional breakdowns. There's like scenes with the actress who plays Lindsay where she had her emotional breakdown, and she was like yelling like, "We're not animals." Yeah, totally makes sense. I totally can imagine like what she went through. And then we'll kind of get to more with Kate Winslet, with her breakdown during Titanic. But the fact that James Cameron really pushes his performers to kind of give those kind of authentic performances. He's kind of like Stanley Kubrick or like David Fincher in a way, where he's really like pushing his performers to get that emotional response that he needs. Sometimes he kind of goes too far with like pushing them to
to like a breaking point, but I know it's like all for the good of the film, all for the good of authenticity. And I know there's like reports of him, kind of like easing up as time gone on. Like Sigourney Weaver's and Kate Winslet's like he was like so intense in the beginning, but now he's like a lot more relaxed. I guess I understand with that. He has like this very ambitious vision. He wants it to be realized in a way. So yeah, I guess there's pros and cons with that. Don't bet against James Cameron. Every time you bet against him, he's always going to be pushing the boundaries, or breaking another box office record or something, or making some kind of filmmaking innovation. He puts his money where his mouth is and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess I can respect it in that way. But yeah, a little intense. All right, now we move on to Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And I think personally this is my favorite James Cameron movie, and I think a lot of other people's as well. The action, the visual effects, the storyline, the drama, it's just a very groundbreaking movie. Speaking of groundbreaking, what I said before with The Abyss, at the time, like this was like the most expensive film ever made, $100 million budget, which had never been done at the time, which you can kind of see because you can tell that James Cameron put everything on the screen. The fact that it was supposed to come out, I think it said like originally supposed to come out like Memorial Day weekend, but they had to push it to like July, and like the prints weren't ready until like the night before the premiere and everything, just to finish all the post-production, the visual effects and all that. But speaking of visual effects, with the innovations of the T-1000 with the liquid metal body and everything, it was very, very innovative. He kind of took the innovations that he had from The Abyss and kind of maximized that by 100 with the T-1000, because I think originally he said that he was wanting to put the T-1000 in the original Terminator movie, but obviously they didn't have the visual effects for that, so he decided to kind of put that on the shelf and just have the T-800, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, for that one. As time went on with visual effects and they started to get more innovative with it, he kind of took that off the shelf, the idea off the shelf, and then kind of ran with it with the T-1000. And he's definitely not just like a little cameo, like he's in the movie. And there's like so many just like really cool shots of him in like the mental ward, kind of going through the bars, or him kind of like raising up from the checkered floor, coming out, obviously when he changes his hand to like a knife and everything, stabbing through the elevators and all that. There's just like a lot of really cool scenes where he's like, wait, is that CGI or is that real? Especially when it comes to like like the makeup and the practical effects, where there's like some scenes where his head gets blown through and he has this giant hole in his head, and it's like, wait, is that CGI or is that practical? So I think they really did a really good job. Stan Winston, shout out to him for like all the innovations he had at his studios when it came to the animatronics, and they kind of mix that up with the kind of ILM visual effects by Dennis Muren. Yeah, the fact that you don't really know what you're seeing at times, and then you're just kind of really just engrossed in the story with it. So yeah, I can definitely appreciate it for that. Speaking of action, that I said previously, like this is definitely his most action-packed movie. I feel like, it probably rivals maybe True Lies, which I'll get to next. But this one, there's just like, action scene after action scene, between the fight scene between like the T-1000 and the T-800. Multiple times they fight, when they first fight in like the mall, and then, the car chase where, John Connor's on the Terminator's motorcycle and they're like running away from the truck that's driven by the T-1000. And then, later on where, like Sarah, John, and the Terminator in like the kind of armored vehicle, and they're driving away from the T-1000 who's in the helicopter flying after them, and then the big confrontation at the very end in the steel mill between the T-800 and the T-1000. Everything where like the Terminator's arm gets like crushed in that structure, and then at the very end where Sarah Connor's like blasting like until he's about to fall over, and then the Terminator comes up, shoots that little grenade, and then he falls into the molten material, and then burns up. So yeah, it's just like a relentless action movie. Whereas the first Terminator was more like a suspense movie. Like there's plenty of action in that one, but it's really more just like a suspense movie. Where this one, is just like an all action movie. There's suspense obviously in it as well, but it really kind of leans more towards how it was with Aliens, where with like Alien it was more a horror movie, and then Aliens was action, where like Terminator is suspense, and then Terminator 2 is definitely more of an action movie. I know sometimes it gets criticized by it kind of leans more into the action than the characters, but I honestly think like the character work on this one is like very, very good, especially with Terminator and John Connor, that whole relationship was really just like a father-son relationship. John Connor didn't have a father because Kyle Reese was killed in the first movie before he was even born. So John grew up without a father. He was very, like the rebellious teenage kid, stealing money from the ATM machine, and, going to the arcade with his redheaded friend and all that. So he never really had a father. And then, obviously Sarah Connor went crazy after the events of the first Terminator movie. She was put into the psych ward, so he didn't really have parents. I mean, he had his foster parents, but he didn't really have a relationship with them. So then as this movie starts, and the Terminator is revealed to be a protector rather than being someone who's trying to terminate John. He's trying to protect him from the other Terminator, T-1000. They kind of form that relationship. And then once they free Sarah from the psych ward, she becomes, more of a mother to him again. So they kind of become this kind of unconventional family. He's teaching them all the phrases like "hasta la vista, baby," and that comes in later on, where Terminator shoots the T-1000 after he's like frozen in the liquid nitrogen, which is another iconic line. I think the relationship drama kind of really works in this movie. And then obviously the very end with the sacrifice, where since the Terminator obviously is a cyborg, that could lead into more of like Skynet rising up. That their whole mission of trying to get the arm from Cyberdyne, destroy that, but and obviously destroy the T-1000, but they still need to destroy the T-800 so that there won't be no indication of Skynet rising up. So the fact that T-800 sacrificed himself, and John Connor kind of has to lose another father figure, was really emotional. The fact that he's like, "I now know why you cry, but something I can't do." It was like very kind of hit me in the feels for sure. Kind of lowers himself into the molted material, burns up and gives him the thumbs up, and then John and Sarah kind of free to live their lives again. I thought was really emotional. So the fact that I'm gonna be a father pretty soon, in a couple months, and I'm gonna have a son. That really hit me in the feels. We'll kind of get more into like father-son stuff with like Avatar: The Way of Water later on. But for now, I thought that was like very, very emotional for sure. Another thing I really appreciate is just like the themes of protecting the value of human life, and having peace over violence. I know that's another thing it gets criticized for, is like it's supposed to be like the most violent movie that kind of talks about anti-violence. The fact that John doesn't want the Terminator to kill anybody in order to protect him, that the Terminator just like shoots people in the knee, or just just like breaks their arms or something. So I guess that message kind of gets skewed a little bit. But the fact the Terminator doesn't kill anybody, and I know like Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of had a problem with that at first. He was like, "Well, I don't kill anybody in this one," and James is like, "No, you're the good guy in this one. You can't kill anybody." I know that kind of took a while for Arnold to kind of get over at first, because he's like the action guy. All the movies he's been in through like the 80s and 90s, he's always like killing the bad guys and stuff. But with this one, he really had to be a protector. And like honestly, I think a lot of people agree too, that this is like Arnold Schwarzenegger's best role in Terminator 2 specifically. Where he's not really good at playing normal people, but when it comes to playing a cyborg, he's perfect. So I thought the fact that the Terminator is very robotic in the beginning, and then as time goes on, he becomes more and more human. And the whole theme with Sarah Connor, where she really pretty much starts off kind of like as a Terminator. Or like in the first one, she's very human and relatable. But then in the second one, she kind of becomes a Terminator herself, with the whole mission to, assassinate Miles Dyson, who's the creator of Cyberdyne, which kind of, as time goes on, becomes Skynet, and then, causes the rise of machines, where she's on that mission to, kill him. And then, she obviously can't bring herself to do it after seeing, Miles with his family and his little boy coming into his office and, wanting to play with him and stuff. I thought that was very emotional as well. So I thought that was a really good theme of like, gaining humanity, losing humanity, and then regaining humanity, where Sarah and the Terminator kind of swap places in a way, where Sarah's very much the victim in the first one, and then she's kind of like in a way kind of like the predator, so to speak. But then through the power of love with Terminator and John, she kind of regains her humanity, kind of refocuses on the mission to, save humanity from the rise of machines, and then kind of go into the third act from there. But I thought that was a really good theme for this movie. I kind of talked to him that before, but I think like the supporting cast is really good. Like Robert Patrick as a T-1000, Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, and then Edward Furlong as John Connor. And then the actor who plays Miles Dyson is also really good as well. Like I said before, kind of become this kind of unconventional family when it comes to like the third act to, save humanity from the rise of machines. And then you have this amazing antagonist with the T-1000, who's just like relentless. I know like Robert Patrick did a lot of research on like how to become this kind of predator. He studied like eagles and just like how they're kind of like lean forward and kind of this focus and that kind of like this kind of unrelenting quality to them. So I thought that was really good. But yeah, kind of like what Vin Diesel says in Fast and Furious, like, it's all about families. So, yeah, like I said before, how they become like this kind of unconventional family, and they have this kind of like these different kind of aspects to it. But yeah, that's just another theme that's very important to James Cameron. It's just the power of family, and what you would do to protect your family, and kind of like the lengths you would go to make sure that they're safe, and that'll become a bigger theme in Avatar: Way of Water, which like I said, I'll get to later. But I'm glad that he kind of establishes that a little bit more in this movie, and then kind of becomes a theme later on in his filmography. All right, now we move on to True Lies, and with this one, kind of like I said before with The Abyss, I haven't seen it a ton of times, so I don't have like a really firm opinion on this one. But I remember like when I saw it, it's like it's just like just a fun action movie. It's kind of like a throwback to like a lot of like like 1960s, 70s like political thrillers in a way. The fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of plays that double life character where like at night, he's Terry Trasker, who's like a computer salesman to his wife, Jamie Lee Curtis. But in the evenings, he's like a spy for like the Omega company. He's like going on secret missions. He's going to like the gala, these art galas, to meet with different contacts to get the insight on this terrorist organization that he's trying to bring down. So yeah, I thought it's just like a fun aspect to that. But yeah, I think just one of the controversies of the movie is the fact that it doesn't really treat its female characters with respect. It kind of shows like a cartoon version of like Middle Eastern people in a way, or and like terrorism and all that, because this was like pre 9/11. This movie came out in 1994, so we kind of had like a very like cartoony attitude towards like Middle Eastern terrorism and things like that. Really things became real like after 9/11, and they I know they were trying to do a sequel for True Lies, but just like times have changed, society had changed. So kind of looking back at this movie, post 9/11, it's like it's kind of very awkward and cartoony a little bit, where like the threat is real now things are just a little bit more sensitive, I guess. But I was kind of reading this review that looking back on it, it's really just like of the time, how America was feeling towards the Middle East, how their thoughts on terrorism. Yeah, in a way, yeah, it really just is of its time. I don't think it really has like the legacy that a lot of other James Cameron films have. But, I think at the time, it's just like very, just entertaining movie. But yeah, it's just something that doesn't really hold up as much today. But yeah, so that was like the thoughts on like the Middle Eastern characters. But as far as like the female characters, like Jamie Lee Curtis's character, I know she kind of has like some action stuff like towards the end, where she's like in that limo that's being driven, across the bridge as like the missiles are coming down. She kind of has that battle with that one woman that was at the beginning in the gala. But yeah, really like she doesn't really have a lot of depth to her. She's kind of like the I guess like the whiny housewife who's like always wanted to get involved in the adventures and stuff. And I feel like it's kind of like a step down from the female characters that James Cameron wrote earlier, like Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor, where they kind of like these bold action characters. But I guess maybe he was just trying to write more of like a realistic scenario. The housewife isn't really gonna be this amazing action star in this first one. And I'm sure like if they were to make a sequel, because at the very end of True Lies, Jamie Lee Curtis's character kind of becomes part of the agency organization, kind of goes on missions. So I'm sure like with the sequel, like she probably would have been Arnold Schwarzenegger's like partner in crime. They would have gone on missions together and stuff like that. So I can understand people not liking her character in this one, especially after coming off of Terminator 2 with seeing like Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor being this iconic action hero, and then suddenly it's just like, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis is just like this kind of whiny, screamy housewife who's being kidnapped and taken to all these different places, kind of like Blaze Scott and Temple of Doom or something. So yeah, so I can totally understand that. So yeah, it's kind of like it's just like an interesting movie in James Cameron's filmography. It's not really like a sci-fi movie. It definitely has really cool action. Like I said before, like the limo driving across the bridge, and the missiles coming down, like destroying everything, and then the full fighter jet chase with Harry on board, trying to go after the terrorists at the very end, and save his daughter from like that crane machine was really cool. The scene where Harry is like on the horse, going through the building, and then jumping off the side of the building and stuff, and then at the very beginning where, he's like drive away on that snow speeder from those terrorists who are like shooting at him, and then they're on their skis chasing after him. There's just like a lot of like fun action stuff. It really does feel like a James Bond movie or something. Maybe like a Roger Moore James Bond movie. Because I know that was James Cameron's inspiration for this. Is like, what if James Bond had to go home and answer to his wife, which I thought was like a really fun twist to the story. Because like James Cameron had multiple marriages, and I'm sure like he was very stressed about that. He brought a lot of his kind of personal stuff into a lot of his movies. Like with The Abyss, he's going through a divorce with Gillian Hurd, and there's like a lot of tension there. So like Bud and Lindsay have a lot of tension there. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of like relatable to that, because I'm being a married man. I know what it's like to kind of go from like work and then come home and answer your wife. I love my wife and everything, but yeah, sometimes it's just like I just want to kind of do my own thing and whatnot. But you got to be a responsible husband. I like that, how that's a lesson that he learns, is he has to kind of balance his work and his life, and realize that he's a husband first, and a father first, and he has to make that his priority, and kind of integrate his personal life into his work life. So in that aspect, I can really appreciate that from the movie. The fact that he has a character arc, and then he has more of like a work-life balance, and he has a better relationship with his wife. Yeah, just more integration in that. So yeah, I can respect the movie for that, for sure. All right, now we'll move on to Titanic, and yeah, this is the big one until we get to Avatar. But this was like obviously the biggest movie of all time, most successful movie of all time. Won 11 Oscars. Became this kind of cultural phenomenon. So like, really, what is there that I can say that hasn't been said already? But I like this movie. I know it gets a lot of hate, because so popular. People want to hate on what's popular. But yeah, I think honestly, this is like a very, very great movie. The fact that James Cameron kind of recreated the Titanic in a way, an event that happened, at least from the movie, like 70 plus years prior, 70, 80 plus years prior. The whole reason why he wanted to make the movie is because he wanted to travel down to the Titanic and see the actual wreck. And he was like trying to convince the studios, is like hey, I mean, we can do this with miniatures, or we can go to the actual wreck of the Titanic and film with submersibles and like underwater cameras and everything. And the studio was like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. So the fact that he got his whole expedition to the Titanic wreck and was able to like film there practically, yeah, I thought it was a really like a fun fact. But yeah, the fact that he was always interested in the ocean and like underwater wrecks and everything. Obviously we can see that through his filmography with The Abyss and with Titanic here, and then later with The Way of Water. I was always had an interest in the ocean and his whole Jacques Cousteau documentaries. But I was also reading that once he actually got to the wreck of the Titanic, he kind of felt like that emotional weight. The fact that this was an actual thing that happened. 15,000 people died during this wreck, and he wanted to pay his respects. So he would go to researchers and go to historians and just make sure that everything was historically accurate as it could be. So when it came down to like designing the sets and like building the actual practical Titanic ship, the costuming, the props and all that, he wanted to be like as accurate as possible. And then the fact that these historians actually came onto the set of the Titanic movie and were able to see like, yeah, nope, you really did everything right. I think there was like some things he said that they didn't get completely right here and there, but I mean, the average viewer isn't gonna see that. Just as a production itself, it's just like a feat in general. People were saying, as he was producing, like, this is gonna be James Cameron's folly. It's gonna be the biggest flop of all time. This is gonna be his water world in a way. So kind of like what I was saying before, say, hey, don't bet against James Cameron. So when he's gonna set out to make something, he's gonna make something great. And just like a bunch of fun facts that happened with it. The fact that like there were so many production delays. It was supposed to come out in July of 1997, but then it got pushed to December, because all the visual effects that happened. The fact that James Cameron gave up his fee to finish this movie and get it out there. The fact that he hasn't gotten a penny from the profits of Titanic, which is kind of ridiculous in a way. Like come on, Fox, give James Cameron his money. Like he deserves it. The fact that it was just such a tumultuous shoot. Like the the fact that the crew got food poisoning during like the filming. Kate Winslet almost suffered hypothermia. Leonardo DiCaprio, his whole kind of diva attitude, like I don't want to get cold and all this stuff. It's just crazy to think of like all the stuff that they went through just to make this movie. The fact that they actually made it and how it became a phenomenon. You have to at least appreciate it for that. Whether you like the movie or not, in that aspect, I think that's something that needs to be talked about. But yeah, speaking of just the movie itself, I think the fact that kind of draws on aspects of like old Hollywood movies, like old Hollywood romance movies, like Gone with the Wind. Like you can kind of match the plot points of like Gone with the Wind over onto this movie. Kind of has that kind of old fashioned Hollywood feel to it, kind of like the old epics, like a David Lean movie or something like that. Dr. Zhivago, all these like 3-hour epics that they made back in the day. Yeah, you just really don't see anymore. And the fact that people were doubting, it's over 3 hours and it's about like a ship sinking and it's gonna be people in like corsets and like what is this? There can't be any sequels. It can't be a franchise. You can't merchandise off of it. It's gonna be like you have to kind of like these relatively unknown actors. Kate Winslet, she was in Sense and Sensibility, and Leonardo DiCaprio was kind of like this up and coming actor. He's in like What's Eating Gilbert Grape and all those movies. So yeah, I can understand like the doubt that was going in. Like I said before, the fact that it was like pulled off at all was like really good. And I think the main hatred that kind of gets over on the movie is just the fact that it's kind of like an earnest movie. Yeah, they're just trying to be like wholesome movies like they made like back in the day. They're not trying to be like those hard edge like 1960s 1970s gangster movies where everything was kind of really more realistic, kind of like reflecting the time, because America's going through like the Vietnam War and Watergate scandal and all that. So the fact like back in like the 1940s and stuff, they were trying to make more just like timeless classics, not really do anything with any cynicism or anything like that, just make just nice wholesome movies in a way. So I think that's why it kind of gets a lot of hate, because it kind of represents movies that came out back in the day and things like that, along with like Avatar and stuff like that, where it's really just they're just trying to just be wholesome, authentic, escapist movies in a way and not really reflect the time that they're in. A lot of people like don't like the relationship between Jack and Rose, but I think it's a good relationship, like a very much Romeo and Juliet situation where like realistically this romance probably wouldn't ever work out, but with the movie, obviously it doesn't work out in the end because spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, Jack dies. But then with Jack dying, Rose is kind of inspired to kind of live again. Where they first meet, she's about to jump off the side of the Titanic and commit suicide because she's going to be married off to Hockley, and then it's this whole arranged marriage that she's not interested in. And then Jack comes into her life and gives her a motivation to live again. Gives her a motivation at first to like kind of go off with him and kind of live this kind of free lifestyle, apart from Hockley and all of his money and stuff like that, where she can feel happy in a relationship even though she's not going to be like rich or anything like that. And then like I said before, when Jack dies, she kind of has this freedom to kind of make her own choices. And then as we see at the very end, where the camera's kind of sweeping past all these different photographs of her life and all these experiences that she had, you can kind of tell that she kind of feels like that life again that Jack inspired in her. She was able to have all these experiences and stuff. So I think in that aspect, there's a reason why like so many people went back to the theater, because yeah, yes, it's a great love story, but in a way, it kind of inspires people to live, in the face of all this tragedy, it allows people to, kind of move on, the whole song, like My Heart Will Go On, which I won't sing here, but, it's kind of, it's more like inspirational in that aspect where, it inspires people to live their life, despite tragedy, and, kind of come together in their communities and have their lives go on. So in that respect, I think James Cameron succeeded with that. All right, now we move on to Avatar. I know another movie that gets a lot of hate. The fact that it's pretty much like Dance with Wolves in Space, or like Fern Gully, or Pocahontas, or Last Samurai, or any of these other movies where you have kind of like the white colonist character kind of going into kind of like the indigenous society, and then kind of learning from their culture, and then joining their culture, and then kind of going against the kind of white colonists. characters that they originally for. So I totally understand like why it gets hate in that aspect. But I think James Cameron was really just trying to do like a story that was like simple for the audience, something that they can understand, because this is science fiction. It takes place in another world, takes place in like the 22nd century, and in order for audiences to kind of relate to the characters, you kind of have to have this kind of simple story to kind of explain this kind of bizarre concept of taking your mind and putting into an avatar body, and then having you walk and talk and interact with the Navi people. Again, like I said before, with James Cameron's filmography, is that you can't bet against him. The fact that he had all these innovations with this movie, with like performance capture and with filming in 3D, and then with the simulcam technology where you can put where you have on the monitor, where you have like the live action footage integrated with CG footage, and it's all together. So yeah, in that aspect, I think it's really very innovative. Because beforehand it was like Polar Express was the big kind of motion capture movie, and everything was very much kind of uncanny valley and very robotic. But he had the whole innovation of having like a helmet cam, so that you can have this camera that's focused on the dots that are placed on the actors' faces, so that you can kind of get more authentic motion capture. I know afterwards it was kind of like the whole 3D craze, where instead of filming in 3D, it was kind of like the post-converted 3D, where it's just like, okay, this isn't really all that great, because I remember, seeing Avatar the first time, and it like the 3D kind of created depth rather than things coming towards you, towards camera. I know it had like some scenes of like things coming at you, but it really kind of created depth where you really felt like immersed in the world of Pandora, where you were like in like the forest, or if you're like flying on the Banshees, it really felt like you were like in it. I know he was trying to have more films be like filmed in 3D, but everyone's just like, oh, let's do a cash grab and just post convert everything to 3D, and then everyone will like it. But every 3D movie I saw after that since, it just wasn't good. The fact that people wanted to keep going back to the theater because it was such an immersive experience. The world of Pandora, and people had like the Avatar blues or whatnot, like this depression where they left the theater and they were depressed because Pandora isn't real. They had to go out into the real world and be miserable and stuff. People always say like it didn't leave a legacy after it was released, and I wish I can totally understand. Like it didn't really have like a lot of like merchandising tie-ins or comic books or video games and stuff like that. It was really just kind of like a one and done, just because it just took so long for the technology to kind of be available to make it. So I'm sure like James Cameron wasn't really thinking about sequels like at that time to be done like right away, because it was just such a innovation, and no one really knew like what to expect from it. I know James Cameron had this idea back in like 1995 or something. It was going to be his follow-up to Terminator 2, but obviously the technology wasn't available for that, so he had to kind of put it on the shelf, and then did like True Lies and Titanic, and then took a break, and then did some documentaries. But then once Lord of the Rings came out, and then he saw what Peter Jackson was doing with Gollum, and then eventually with King Kong, he said, hey, now's the time to finally do performance capture and really kind of make it more authentic, representation of like what a human being could be in CGI. So he kind of took it back off the shelf and started working on it for like the next couple of years, and then the rest is history until we got to Avatar 2, which we'll get to in a second after this. But yeah, I think just overall, it's just a very visually impressive film. Like the world building's great. The visual effects are obviously amazing. James Horner's score is great. Like I listened to that like a whole bunch of times. Even though the story is very, very thin and very cliche, the characters are very, kind of like two-dimensional. Yeah, you can't deny, the visual effects, and the fact that James Cameron like innovated so many things with this film is just undeniable. So yeah, I think in that aspect it was really good. But James Cameron isn't going to win the Oscars for best screenplay, so you kind of have to go into his movies knowing that's probably not going to be the most amazing story, the most amazing dialogue or characters. I think even like back in his other films, even though Terminator I think is like his most original film, not everything's iconic. I know he has like a lot of iconic lines in his movies, like I'll Be Back and Hasta Vista Baby, and I'm the king of the world and all that. I guess as far as plotting and like characterization and character arcs, his later careers kind of lean more towards kind of visual innovation rather than like story, character, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Avatar: The Way of Water kind of improves that in a way, but yeah, I'll get to that in a second. I guess, yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the social themes that were in the movie as well. I think the fact that he has this kind of environmental message and kind of anti-war message, yeah, it was really actually surprising, because I really thought going into it is going to be more of the cliche, Dance with Wolves, Pocahontas, kind of like what I said before. But the fact that, when the humans are kind of bombing Home Tree and then it kind of like topples over, I felt like I was, getting very emotional about that. And, the fact that they kind of had this kind of subtext of, caring about the environment, like the scene where like the bulldozers are coming in, and, knocking down all those trees, that's kind of, where the Fern Gully reference kind of comes in. But the fact that, yeah, it's not just, just some kind of fun action adventure, technological, innovative movie, but, the fact that it has these themes, the fact that James Cameron wants to use these movies to continue on those environmental messages, with this one being about saving the rainforest and the next one being about saving the ocean. I respect that idea for sure. Where, yeah, you not only want to entertain people and, innovate this technology, but you also want to have these social messages in as well. And the fact that they don't hit you over the head with these messages, the fact that, the characters aren't like talking to the camera and then like having this whole thing, but we need to save the environment, save the rainforest. It kind of just comes through the actions of the characters, and you can kind of see the reactions on the characters' faces, and you're kind of feeling it with them, which James, that was kind of his approach, as kind of have the themes kind of be subtle and not hit you over the head with everything. I'm sure people will feel differently about it. I'm pretty sure some people will think, oh yeah, those environmental messages are so obvious, but at least like from what I'm watching, it just seems like the characters are just like experiencing it rather than, saying it outright. Or, James Cameron coming at the end of the credits and saying this whole message, like, I think his intention is to kind of just have the characters experience these issues rather than having them like speak about them and, stop the story in its tracks and then just talk about the message. So yeah, I think that's an aspect of these movies that I respect. And yeah, I'm excited to see what he does with the Avatar sequels, and how he can kind of continues with his environmental messages, and how the story kind of builds from there, how we kind of see these kind of issues through the character's eyes. So yeah, we'll see. All right, and then to sort of wrap all this up, we'll go ahead and go to Avatar: The Way of Water. This is another one that I really much enjoyed. Another kind of visual feast, so to speak, especially when it came to like the underwater motion capture. And I'm sure like everyone like me was wondering like why an Avatar sequel didn't come out like a lot sooner. Like 2015 I think was the original projected date for that, but obviously they had to wait for the technology to catch up because James wanted to explore the oceans of Pandora, and there's really no way that you can really do that. So I know like originally with his journey to the Mariana Trench, filmed footage from there and then kind of use that in this movie, but I'm sure like that that didn't really work out. I mean, he still had that great trip down to the Mariana Trench. It's the first person to dive down there because I think it's like 7 miles deep below the ocean level. So in that aspect, he was a trailblazer in that. But when it came to actually creating underwater motion capture, that was going to take a long time. And then not only that, but he was also wanting to do Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5. And for that one, like he wanted to have all the scripts set because he wanted to film 2 and 3 simultaneously and a little bit of 4, just because of like the teenage characters. He didn't want them to have the Stranger Things effect to where suddenly like one film they're like 12 years old and the next film they're like 27 or something. So he wanted to film everything simultaneously. And then obviously with all the visual effects, that took a long time as well. And then it was supposed to come out in 2020, but then with the COVID pandemic, theaters shut down, and they didn't want to do it in 2021 because that's when theaters were starting to slowly but surely come back. But then now with 2022, theaters are back in motion. They're not as successful as they are pre-pandemic, but they're still coming back. So now is the time to finally get Avatar: The Way of Water. And yeah, thank goodness we did, because as of this recording, it's like almost the biggest grossing movie of 2022. It's like about to pass Top Gun Maverick, and I'm sure when this video comes out, it'll probably surpass Top Gun Maverick and be like the biggest movie of 2022. And the fact that there were like all these people saying like, oh, Avatar 2 is gonna be a flop, like no one's gonna go see it, it's been too long since the original one came out, which yeah, I agree with. It definitely came a little bit too late, but the fact that it came out at all is pretty impressive. I was one of those people who were just like, it's like, come on, just give it a chance. Like, I know the first Avatar wasn't like as a cultural phenomenon the year it came out, but didn't really leave behind a legacy, which I agreed with. But the fact that people were saying like, "Oh, this is gonna be a flop. No one's gonna go see it," I did have some doubts, but I didn't think it was gonna be a flop. I knew people were gonna watch this movie for sure. Just based on that first teaser trailer that came out. Like the visuals, the music, the underwater motion capture. It's just like breathtaking. That was just the teaser trailer, so I was like very much excited about it. I guess the only thing I was nervous about was just like, is anybody else gonna be really excited to see it? But yeah, obviously, all those haters were proven wrong because now it's made over $1 billion. I know James Cameron was saying that this first one needs to make $1 billion in order to pay off his investment, because with each of the Avatar sequels, they kind of average at $250 million to make, and he made 4 of them, so altogether make $1 billion. So yeah, so so he's set to make his Avatar sequels. So we'll see how those go. I know the next one's supposed to come out in like 2024, Avatar 3. So yeah, I'm excited to see that one. But yeah, as for the movie itself, like I said before with the first Avatar, the story's a little thin. The characters are a little bit thin. The dialogue's not all that great. But then again, you don't really go to a James Cameron movie for the dialogue and like the characterization of the story. You go for the visuals, and everything with the underwater scenes that the characters go through was just breathtaking. The visual effects were even better than the first movie. There were some moments where I'm just like, how is this not real? Like even like the trailer, there's like some shots where it's just like, oh my gosh, that CGI is like so realistic. So yeah, I'm glad that they took their time to make the visual effects as good as they could be. But yeah, the fact that it was in 3D again. Some theaters had kind of like the seats that kind of move. I didn't go to that one. I just went to the theater that had like 3D, and then also had like a higher frame rate, which I'm not a fan of. I know Peter Jackson did that with the Hobbit movies, where all of them were shot in 48 frames per second, where everything kind of looked very sped up and everything looked, like too real, where it looked like, you can kind of see everything was done like on a set, or it looked like kind of like a soap opera. So I appreciated with Way of Water that it kind of switched between 24 frames per second and 48 frames, where for 24 frames it was just kind of like the normal talking scenes, and then it switched to 48 during the action scenes, and then some of it worked, some of it didn't work, some of it looked like, okay, this is a little bit sped up, it's not really like, it doesn't really look all that realistic. But then some of the action scenes, like, okay, yeah, the 48 frames definitely helps. So I'm hoping with Avatar 3, 4, and 5 that they kind of smooth that out a little bit more. They'll have 2 years to figure that out. So hopefully everything will be good with that. But yeah, like it was just like, just a great visual experience, very great emotional experience as well, which yeah, I'll just go into full spoilers right now. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can just skip ahead a couple minutes. The eldest son dies. That like I was getting really choked up at that scene. I remember like in like the first Avatar, like I was getting choked up when like Home Tree got knocked over and you see them all like screaming and everything. But with this one, with eldest son getting killed, like that was like very, very emotional as well. I know some people said they saw it coming, and you can kind of sense like something was going to happen, either like the eldest son or the middle son would die, or like Jake would die or something, because like, I had a feeling like there's no way these characters can kind of go through this kind of ship sinking battle going on and everyone gets out unscathed. I figured like someone would get sacrificed, but yeah, I had no idea like it was going to be like how emotional it would be once it actually did happen. So once it did happen, I was getting choked up. I was kind of looking over at the guys that I was with, and like I was like, are they choked up too? And then later on, after we left the theater, like when my brother-in-law said yeah, I was getting choked up too. So yeah, it was definitely a very, very emotional experience for sure. And like I said before, me being about to be a father, seeing that very emotionally affected me. Seeing Neytiri pregnant and seeing Kate Winslet's character being pregnant as well, because like currently my wife's pregnant, so that emotionally affected me as well. Kind of like that being being the protector, trying to be like a protector, being good like husband and father and everything. So yeah, I think that's a really good theme that James Cameron has in his movies. Having like so many kids and everything. He wants to be the father that that his kids deserve in a way. He kind of has those themes throughout like the back half of his movies. Like Terminator 2 and True Lies, and now with Avatar, Way of Water, and then even like with Motherhood with Ellen Ripley over Newton Aliens, or with Sarah Connor over John Connor in Terminator 2. It's really all about family. Like I said earlier, like these movies are about family. The fact that Jake and Neytiri are parents now, which I thought was like really good change from the first movie. Gives them more responsibility. Or as reading an interview, like James Cameron wanted to evolve Jake's character a little bit more, whereas first where he'd be stupid enough to jump off his banshee and then jump onto a Turok and everything, but now that he's a dad, He's probably gonna think about it a little bit more. Not that he's like a coward or anything, but because like he has people that he has to be there for. He has kids that he needs to protect. So yeah, I totally kind of relate to that on that level. But yeah, the fact that these kids are gonna kind of be like the next generation of this Avatar series is really cool. I think like Loak, the middle son, was probably my favorite character. His relationship with the giant whale, the Tulkun, was really cool. I mean, the whole theme of like I said before, protecting the environment. Now it's about protecting the oceans, and now with the whole like whaling sequence and like the hunters going after the whales just so they can get that serum that causes the humans to stop aging in general, which it's kind of pros and cons. Like pros, like it was like very emotional scene and everything, which really affected like me and the audience and stuff. But like cons, because like it kind of comes out of nowhere. Cause like the first movie is about like the unobtainium, and now this movie was about humans invading. But then it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, now we have this kind of serum that stops aging for humans, like, and they don't really address it afterwards. So I think because like maybe there's like a lot of scenes that are on the cutting room floor that they couldn't address, which yeah, I guess another thing. It's just like the runtime, it's like over 3 hours, which I know a lot of people complain about, but I think there's watching the movie, there's not really a ton that you can cut out, because a lot of the scenes that weren't really like plot heavy, they're really more like character driven, and they kind of like build relationships, the teenagers with the other teenagers, Loak with Paikon the Tulkun giant whale creature, Jake Sully and Atiri, and then the relationship between Quaritch and Spider. Kind of had to build all these different relationships that were going on. So you couldn't really, there's not really a ton that you can cut out, but James was saying like hey, like, don't feel obligated to keep watching it straight through. You can go pee if you need to. So I thought that was pretty funny. I think it could have been a tad bit shorter. Maybe cut like 10-15 minutes out, maybe not like a whole half hour or something in my opinion, but maybe like 10-15 minutes could have been good, just to make it like a solid just 3 hours instead of 3 hours and 14 minutes, I think, or 12 minutes this movie is. So yeah, I think that could have been good. But yeah, I guess briefly to talk about the relationships and stuff, between Jake and Natiri. I thought Natiri kind of got a little bit sidelined in this movie, because she was like a main character in the first one, but yeah, she didn't really get too much to do. Like she had a lot of cool action sequences and stuff, but she kind of gets pushed to the side. But I guess it's understandable, because you need to raise up the teenage characters, which I thought all the teenage characters were great. The only one that I kind of had a problem with was Kiri, played by Sigourney Weaver, which I thought was kind of weird. Like I didn't mind her doing like the motion capture, but the fact that they used Sigourney Weaver's voice for that instead of like a teenage girl's voice, I thought was kind of like off-putting in a way. I didn't have a problem with her character. I think it was kind of cool that she was kind of a combination of Grace Augustine and Awa, so she kind of has these kind of like controls nature in a way, which I thought was really cool, and I'm sure they'll explain more of that in the third movie. But for this one, yeah, I just thought Sigourney Weaver playing Kiri was just a little off. But yeah, other characters were great. I think, yeah, Spider was another character that I know a lot of people had a problem with, because he would kind of jump back and forth between like his relationship with Jake and his relationship with Quaritch. I thought it would have been really cool if he just kind of just stayed with Quaritch the entire time at the very end, and kind of turned into this villainous character where he's kind of like the inside man for Quaritch and the other humans. But yeah, he decided to kind of go back with the Sully family. And, I know there's going to be an awkward relationship between Natiri and Spider, because there's already an awkward relationship because he's a human, and then the humans were, the ones that kind of destroyed her home on Pandora. So she kind of has like a tension-filled relationship, and now that she almost tried to kill him at the very end, there's going to be some awkwardness there. So maybe that'll be a motivation for Spider to join Quaritch later on, because Quaritch is still alive at the very end of this one. And I thought like they kind of gave him more depth. The fact that they gave him a son, made him a father, so it gave him something more to care about, rather than just like, I'm just alive just to kill Jake and destroy Pandora for all its resources. So I thought they kind of gave him a lot more kind of depth to his character. So I mean, I'm excited to see what happens with him in number 3. I'm sure he'll have this whole character arc now that he's a Na'vi, or a recumbent, so he's like part Na'vi, part human. So I'm sure like as time goes on, he'll like connect with Awa, and he'll appreciate the environment more. And then if more humans come, maybe he'll be on the side with Jake, and then they can form an alliance, and then kind of go against the humans in like a final battle or whatever they decide to do with the sequels. So yeah, I think like I said before, they kind of improved on the characters a little bit, but it's not like anything spectacular. And as before, like I'm sure Avatar 3, 4, and 5 will continue to develop the characters a little bit more and kind of give more depth, where it's kind of more story and character driven rather than like just about the amazing visuals. So we'll see what happens with that. I guess just sort of like wrapping my thoughts on Avatar: Way of Water is like, I just really appreciate the fact that like I keep saying before, like James Cameron has this kind of amazing grand vision. He's like, I'm gonna do underwater motion capture. It's like, okay, how do we do that? And then the fact that not only does he set these kind of high goals, but he also figures out a way to kind of achieve those. He has like the people around him, experts in their field who they might think he's a little bit crazy at the beginning, but as time goes on, they see how innovative he is, and his genius in a way. So yeah, I can definitely appreciate that for sure. And the fact that anything really that he can imagine, he can kind of get on screen. It's just a matter of like how and when. And the fact that he can actually achieve those things is very inspirational to me. And kind of every time I kind of limit myself in a box of like creativity, I just like watch one of his movies, and it kind of inspires me to kind of think outside the box and kind of expand my creativity. So I can really appreciate him for that, for sure. And that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like James Cameron movies, be sure to comment below which one's your favorite. Yeah, I'm hoping to do more of these kind of videos. Maybe I'll take on like Christopher Nolan next or something, or Taika Waititi or Ryan Johnson or whoever. But yeah, if you have a suggestion on what I should do next, leave that in the comment section below. And be sure to give this video a like and subscribe for more videos. And I'll see you next time.